So, the newest entry in the MCU has landed, and it certainly made a splash, but people can't seem to decide if it's a splash like this, or a splash like this. But don't you worry, people, I have come from on high to deliver my opinion to settle this. Is Thor Love and Thunder great? Is it underdog ass? No, it's really not either of those. I'm going to start with my non-spoiler thoughts, then get into a deeper discussion with spoilers, and if I have any, I might do some ideas for Thor sequels. Sound good? Good. So, before I start this review, let me preface it by saying that I am not one of those MCU, feminism is ruining my comic book movie assholes. I think it's cool that the MCU is trying to represent more types of people. So with that out of the way, I thought that this movie really tried to capture the lightning in a bottle, if you will, or won't, that Ragnarok had. I haven't talked about Ragnarok, but it's one of the best MCU films. In my opinion, it only really has one flaw. And that's all the Asgard shit, honestly. The movie has a really good pace, but whenever it starts, being Shakespeare, it drags to a halt. And I think that the humor in Ragnarok is tied with the Guardians and Spider-Man films as the best in the MCU. And I think for Ragnarok, it's all due to one important thing: the characters. The plural there is very important, because the reason why Ragnarok's humor works so well is because every character is funny in different ways. The interaction where Thor tells the story about how Loki turned into a snake one time just to be a dick to Thor is a perfect example of this, because this exchange would not work at all if any of the roles were flipped. Now, the humor in Love and Thunder is still good, but it's only really as good as Ragnarok when the main cast is around other characters. But when the cast is alone, all their lines kind of start to mold together till they're like a giant, rocky, blonde Valkyrie who has cancer. Now, I think it's clear that the main draw of this movie is supposed to be its humor, which has its ups and downs, and some people really dislike it. So what about the other parts of the movie? Will you let me talk about those for 5 seconds? Why are you being so rude about this? Gore is great. Shocking no one, Christian Bale does a good job at pretending to be an unhinged maniac. The soundtrack is really fun, and I think most importantly for a summer action blockbuster, this film moves. I was only bored once, and honestly, for a Marvel film, that's pretty good. So, I guess I'll do spoilers now, but only if you smash that like button and leave a subscribe, baby. Marvel, don't introduce and then kill off a great villain challenge. Level impossible, apparently. Yeah, so this movie once again takes a great character with incredible potential and kills them after just one movie. Thank you, Marvel. And there are other things in this film that aren't necessarily thrown away, but aren't treated with any more importance than any other plot device. Not to say that they get rid of them necessarily, but they introduce these huge concepts like eternity, and now that first impression is already made, and eternity just doesn't seem that important. The fact is that there have been far more Marvel movies than not that have killed their main villain after just one movie. And that is a big issue, because yes, people come for the heroes, but they also come for those reoccurring villains that they learn to love. We know this from comic books. This really leads into the question of whether or not this movie is good for the MCU, regardless of it being a good movie, which I personally believe it is. I think that this film is funny, exciting, and even heartfelt and genuine at times. However, I believe that this movie is straight up poisonous for the MCU. One of the biggest issues is that the best moments in this film are ones that are directly harmful for the MCU. For example, I personally really liked the moment where Thor creates a child army by transferring his power for a limited time only. I really liked this moment, but, what? Has he always been able to do this? Is it always for a limited time? Do they have to be children? Why is this not his opening move in, every fight he's in? Also, I personally really enjoy Natalie Portman as the Mighty Thor. I really liked the question of what is the best or right way to die from cancer? Is it better to painfully extend your life, or to purposefully die sooner but perhaps feel more fulfilled? However, they brought in this great, really interesting hero, and now she's just dead after one film, and you could bring her back if Natalie Portman would ever come back, which of course she won't. But anything you do to reverse her sacrifice will lessen this movie, and a lot of people already really dislike this film. I think that these two deaths feel even dumber and more jarring, because this movie has 3 fake-out deaths. I think most people would agree that one fake-out death is a little trashy. Once again, this movie is very fun, but the longer a movie goes on when it does shit like fake-out deaths and solving problems with random ass pulls, no matter how fun it is, at a certain point it becomes impossible to invest in that film, and the MCU is all about investment. And post-Endgame, people are already so eager to quit before the next big thing, and now is not the time to have these movies which erode the foundation of this universe. Now's the time to double down on that foundation. After this film especially, there's so much discourse over whether or not the MCU would have been better off ending after Endgame, and obviously these films will end someday. But I think it would be a real shame if this universe ended before we got to see the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and of course, more Spider-Man Until I Die. So I'm really conflicted here, because on the one hand I want to say like, hey, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, just because this movie wasn't maybe the best, doesn't mean that we should just quit on the whole idea. However, I mean, if you're not liking these movies anymore, vote with your wallet, don't go see them. Don't just see them because you feel like you have to. So that's my main takeaway from this movie. I thought it was fun, although sloppily written, and definitely not good for the future of the MCU. A couple other points, I thought Russell Crowe was hilarious as Zeus. The whole God City was my favorite part of the film. Also, there was a lot of hubbub around this movie being the gayest Marvel film. I mean, yeah, I guess it was. I think the representation in the film is pretty cool. A lot of man-babies are really upset about it, but also, if you are one of those people saying, Taika Waititi, this movie wasn't that gay. You know what film was gayer? Brokeback Mountain. Yeah, no shit, dude. It is still Disney. It's pretty crazy that they made a relevant character gay at all. At the end of the day, this film really feels like an 80s high fantasy kind of throwback film, like how Ragnarok took a lot of cues from films like Flash Gordon with sci-fi, and you can really feel this 80s vibe through the set design, the soundtrack, and the slapdash cocaine-fueled way the plot was clearly put together. So this is not going to be nearly as in-depth as my sequel ideas for the Batman, because I have barely read any Thor, especially in comparison to the amount of Batman I've read, so I'm going to try and go for more of a general vibe. I think that this movie took Thor a little too far in the dumb jock department. I think that his personality should be a bit closer to his Ragnarok/Infinity War interpretation. I think that the
"He's never fought me twice"
line is a perfect representation of where I want this guy. I really liked Ragnarok overall, but it didn't feel as much of a Thor story as I think it should have been. The best parts of that movie had nothing to do with gods or grand cosmic scales. And I think that this movie did that a lot better. This really felt like a Thor story. So, in that Thor story way, I think this should be a 90-minute film of him fighting the Condiment King. Hey y'all, thank you so much for watching that video as always. I think you can tell what I'm doing differently this time. But leave your thoughts on the movie down in the comments for me, please. I'd really appreciate hearing what my loyal, loving, trusting, and cult-like viewers would like to say about this film. I would really appreciate that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. So I was still at this. I thought that last week was going to be the last week of this bad boy, but it turns out that this is the last week of this bad boy, I think. And then it'll be somewhere else. I'm not telling you where. That's too bad. Uh-oh, are you going to cry about it? You stupid baby. Thanks for watching, y'all. I'll see you next week. Bye.